I'm not for sale, Mr. Knight. I choose love, not luxury. That's what she said. Right there, in the middle of a $1 million gala, under a chandelier worth more than most people's homes. With the cameras rolling, the crowd holding its breath, and a billionaire CEO kneeling in front of her. Everyone thought she was crazy. They called her ungrateful, foolish, stupid. But what if I told you she was the only one in that room who wasn't for sale? This is not a fairy tale. This is not one of those stories where the poor girl magically becomes a princess. This is the story of Alara, a girl who was kicked out of her house, slept in a car, scrubbed oil off tires just to eat, and still chose heart over diamonds. But before she stood in front of the world and rejected the man Forbes called America's youngest tech god, let's rewind. Let's go back to the night she was dragged by her stepmother and thrown into the cold. This is the story of second chances, the ones we give and the ones we don't.
Alara had never believed in happy endings. Not really. Not after what happened on her 20th birthday. It was raining that night. Not just a drizzle, but the kind of storm that feels personal. The kind that doesn't just soak your skin, but buries itself in your bones. She stood there on the front porch of the Sterling estate, holding a ripped duffel bag, her fingers trembling as thunder cracked across the sky. Behind her, the heavy door slammed shut, locked. Her stepmother, Marissa, didn't just kick her out, she threw her out, literally. Alara's sketches, hundreds of hours of work, were torn and scattered across the marble floor. Her laptop, smashed. Her phone, gone. And all because Marissa claimed she stole money from the family account. Money that had mysteriously vanished right after Marissa's daughter, Camille, maxed out a platinum card on a weekend in Vegas. But Alara wasn't allowed to speak. She was just the late artist's daughter, the outsider, the charity case. And now she was homeless. That night, she slept in the back seat of a rusted Toyota Corolla parked behind a gas station. It didn't lock. The seat smelled like old fries, and she curled up in the back, hugging her sketchbook like it was a lifeline. Because it was. The next morning, she woke up to knocking. Not from police, not from a stranger, but from a guy in grease-stained jeans holding a half-eaten sandwich and a toolbox. "You okay in there?" he asked. She wanted to lie, say she was fine, say she was waiting for someone. But when she opened her mouth, no words came out, just air. The guy looked at her, then at the car. "You hungry?" Alara nodded. That was how she met Jace. He didn't ask questions. He didn't judge the fact that she'd slept in a car or hadn't showered in 2 days. He just handed her half his sandwich and said, "There's a sink in the garage if you need to wash up." It was the first time in weeks anyone had looked at her without expecting something. Jace was quiet, kind, a mechanic with calloused hands and soft eyes. He offered her a part-time job sweeping up the auto shop where he worked. It didn't pay much, but it was honest, and for the first time in a long time, Alara didn't feel invisible. What she didn't know was that this broken garage and the boy with grease on his sleeves were about to become the beginning of a story the world would never forget.
2 weeks passed. The rain stopped. But for Alara, the storm wasn't over. She spent her mornings sweeping oil-stained floors at the shop and her evenings wiping down car windows while pretending the ache in her lower back didn't exist. She didn't complain. She couldn't afford to. Each dollar she earned went toward instant noodles and quarters for the laundromat. But at night, when the shop lights dimmed and the garage doors rattled shut, Alara sat on the steps with her sketchbook in her lap and a stub of a pencil in her hand. Her designs came to life under the flickering street lamp, dresses made of dreams, coats lined with fire, bold shapes, soft curves. Her world was black and white by day, but when she drew, it exploded into color. Jace noticed. He always pretended he wasn't looking, but sometimes he'd walk past and mutter things like, "That one looks like something off a runway," or, "If I had money, I'd wear that." She'd laugh, quietly, and keep drawing. Jace didn't ask about her past, and Alara never brought it up, but there was a silence between them that felt safe. Not awkward, not tense, just safe. Like maybe two broken things had found a way to lean on each other without shattering. Then came the day the black car pulled up. A sleek, silver-trimmed Tesla, polished so perfectly it reflected the entire block like a mirror. The man who stepped out looked like he belonged on a magazine cover. Tall, sharp-suited, and confident in the way only billionaires ever are. Declan Knight, CEO of Knight Corp., youngest tech mogul in the country, worth over $7 billion. He wasn't supposed to be there. Not on that street, not in that neighborhood. But his car had overheated during a last-minute detour, and the only open garage at the edge of town was the one Alara cleaned every night. She didn't see him right away. Her head was buried under the hood of a dusty sedan, wiping grime off the dashboard. But when she stood up and turned around, their eyes met. And for a second, everything stopped. Declan tilted his head, studying her like she was some kind of puzzle. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because she looked entirely out of place, like someone meant for something bigger. Alara looked away. She didn't know it yet, but that moment would change everything. The girl with grease on her cheek had just caught the attention of the country's most powerful man. And the world? It was about to watch.
Declan Knight was used to people staring at him, but not like this, not with confusion, not with caution, and definitely not with the kind of glance Alara gave him, like she had nothing to prove and nothing to ask for. She handed him a cold bottle of water without a word, then turned back to wiping the dashboard. Her fingers moved quickly, practiced, like she had done this 100 times before, because she had. Jace walked out from the side of the garage, wiping his hands with an old towel. "You're the owner of this Tesla?" he asked. Declan nodded. He wasn't used to being treated like a regular customer, but for some reason, he didn't mind. He liked the quiet, the lack of red carpets and staged smiles. The repair didn't take long, 30 minutes, maybe less. But Declan stayed longer than he needed to. He lingered, watched. And just before leaving, he did something unexpected. He walked up to Alara and said, "I'm hosting a design challenge next month. The winner gets a spot in our innovation incubator. Are you interested?" Alara blinked, unsure if she had heard him right. "Excuse me? You sketch. I saw the book next to your bag. You're good. Better than good. If you're serious, this is your shot." She stared at him. Was this real, or another cruel joke life was playing on her? Jace stepped closer, his brows furrowed. "She doesn't need charity, man." Declan smiled, unfazed. "This isn't charity. It's opportunity." He handed her a black business card, sleek, embossed, just his name and a private number. "Call me, or don't. But if you're half as talented as I think you are, someone else will." Then he turned, climbed back into his Tesla, and was gone. Silence filled the garage. Alara looked down at the card. It felt heavy, like a door opening to a world she thought was closed forever. But Jace was quiet. Too quiet. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, but didn't smile. "Just be careful, Alara. Guys like that, they don't see people like us. They see projects. They get bored." She looked at him, eyes soft. "And what do you see?" Jace didn't answer, because deep down, he was already afraid. Afraid that the girl who once slept in the back of a broken car was about to outgrow the boy who helped her survive it. Ilara didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her borrowed cot in the back office of the garage, holding the black card like it was a ticking bomb. Part of her wanted to tear it in half. The other part couldn't stop shaking. No one had ever seen her like that before. Not since her dad died. Not since the world decided she didn't belong anywhere. But Declan Knight had looked at her like she wasn't a mistake, like she mattered. And that scared her. By morning, the card was still on the table. She hadn't called, but she hadn't thrown it away either. Jace acted normal. Too normal. He offered her coffee, asked if she wanted the usual breakfast sandwich, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "You ever think about doing something else?" she asked him. "Like what?" "Something bigger, different, somewhere that's not here." He shrugged. "I think about surviving. That's big enough." Ilara looked down. She wanted more, and she was starting to feel guilty for that. 3 days later, Declan's assistant called the garage. He didn't wait for Ilara to call him. He sent a black SUV to pick her up. She almost said no. Almost. But something in her chest wouldn't let her. When she arrived at the Knight Corp Tower, it felt like walking into another universe. Glass floors, polished marble walls, people with perfect suits and perfect teeth, moving like they were late for the rest of their lives. And then there was Declan. He walked toward her like he owned gravity itself. "Glad you came," he said. He led her to a room. Bright. Minimal. Just one table and a sketch pad. "Design anything you want," he told her. "No rules, just make me feel something." Ilara sat. Her fingers shook at first. Then they didn't. She drew. 3 hours later, she slid the pad across the table. Declan stared at the page, then looked at her. "You didn't just design an outfit, you told a story." She opened her mouth, unsure of what to say. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "Bring more." And just like that, she was in. But while Ilara's world was rising, Jace's was falling apart. His landlord posted an eviction notice that same day. And across town, while she stepped into marble floors and skylines, he stood outside a broken garage holding a notice that said, "Final warning," in red ink. He didn't call her. Because sometimes, when someone you love begins to fly, the last thing you want is for them to look back and see you drowning. The next 2 weeks moved faster than anything Ilara had ever known. Every morning, a black SUV picked her up and drove her to the Knight Corp design studio. She'd walk past marble pillars and glass elevators, through doors that whispered open like magic. Inside, everything smelled like money and possibility. Declan was always there, calm, observant, hands in his pockets, watching her the way people watch storms roll in, expecting something powerful. He never hovered, never pressured, just let her work. And she worked harder than she ever had. Every sketch she handed in led to another. Every idea built on the one before it. For the first time, her talent wasn't a secret she had to hide in a notebook. It was out in the open, respected, even admired. But late at night, back in the quiet of the garage office, something gnawed at her. Jace hadn't spoken much lately. She still slept above the shop, though she spent less time there. More nights ended with her too tired to talk, too full of noise from her new world. One evening, she found a note on the desk where she used to sketch. "Ilara, I got another warning today. Rent's past due. They're shutting off the lights next week. Don't worry, I'll figure it out. Jay." She stared at the handwriting, her chest tightening. She hadn't even noticed the electricity had flickered the night before. or that the fridge was empty. She had been too busy designing coats for rich investors. The guilt hit her hard. She thought about calling him, offering help, but something stopped her. Maybe pride. Maybe fear that he'd say no. Or worse, yes. Meanwhile, Declan kept drawing her in. He started asking her questions that had nothing to do with fashion. What kind of music do you like? Favorite place as a kid? Ever wanted to travel? He remembered details, brought her coffee without asking, sent her articles about artists he thought she'd admire. One afternoon, he showed up with a single sketch in hand, a design she had done in week 1. "This piece, it feels like you," he said. She smiled, a little surprised. No one had ever tried to understand her like that. He leaned against the table. "I know what it's like to feel invisible, Ilara. I was the poor kid too, the one who wasn't supposed to make it. You don't owe anyone your loyalty, not when they've already written you off." The words lingered in the air like smoke. And somewhere across town, Jace stood alone in the dark, counting every coin he had left, wondering if he'd already lost her for good.
2 weeks passed. The rain stopped. But for Ilara, the storm wasn't over. She spent her mornings sweeping oil-stained floors at the shop, and her evenings wiping down car windows while pretending the ache in her lower back didn't exist. She didn't complain. She couldn't afford to. Each dollar she earned went toward instant noodles and quarters for the laundromat. But at night, when the shop lights dimmed and the garage doors rattled shut, Ilara sat on the steps with her sketchbook in her lap and a stub of a pencil in her hand. Her designs came to life under the flickering street lamp. Dresses made of dreams, coats lined with fire, bold shapes, soft curves. Her world was black and white by day, but when she drew, it exploded into color. Jace noticed. He always pretended he wasn't looking, but sometimes he'd walk past and mutter things like, "That one looks like something off a runway," or, "If I had money, I'd wear that." She'd laugh, quietly, and keep drawing. Jace didn't ask about her past, and Ilara never brought it up, but there was a silence between them that felt safe. Not awkward, not tense, just safe. Like maybe two broken things had found a way to lean on each other without shattering. Then came the day the black car pulled up. A sleek, silver-trimmed Tesla, polished so perfectly it reflected the entire block like a mirror. The man who stepped out looked like he belonged on a magazine cover. Tall, sharp-suited, and confident in the way only billionaires ever are. Declan Knight, CEO of Knight Corp., youngest tech mogul in the country, worth over $7 billion. He wasn't supposed to be there. Not on that street, not in that neighborhood. But his car had overheated during a last-minute detour, and the only open garage at the edge of town was the one Ilara cleaned every night. She didn't see him right away. Her head was buried under the hood of a dusty sedan, wiping grime off the dashboard. But when she stood up and turned around, their eyes met. And for a second, everything stopped. Declan tilted his head, studying her like she was some kind of puzzle. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because she looked entirely out of place, like someone meant for something bigger. Ilara looked away. She didn't know it yet, but that moment would change everything. The girl with grease on her cheek had just caught the attention of the country's most powerful man. And the world? It was about to watch.
Ilara didn't answer right away. She stood on that rooftop, surrounded by the glow of the city, the weight of Declan's offer sinking deep into her bones, her name in lights, her sketches turned into real collections, her dreams finally alive. It was everything she wanted, or at least everything she thought she did. She looked up at Declan. His expression was calm, unreadable. He wasn't pressuring her. He didn't need to. The offer spoke for itself. But in the quiet pause between them, Her chest tightened. She mumbled, "I just need time." Declan nodded. "Of course. Take all the time you need. But know this, offers like this don't wait forever." His voice was gentle, but there was finality behind it. That night, Ilara didn't go back to the tower suite Declan had offered her. She went back to the garage. It was cold. The lights were off. The smell of gasoline and metal hung heavy in the air. Jace wasn't there. The back office was dark, stripped clean. His toolbox was gone. The small radio she used to hear humming at night was silent. And on the desk, where her sketchbook once sat, was a folded note. She opened it with shaky hands. "Didn't want to say goodbye. Figured you were already gone. You don't owe me anything. Just keep drawing. Jay." Her knees gave out. She sat on the floor, note in hand, staring at the empty space where their lives used to overlap. All the little things he had done for her, the quiet care, the way he looked at her like she wasn't broken. She had been chasing something big, fame, recognition, power. But she realized, sitting alone on that cold concrete floor, that the first person who ever made her feel truly seen never asked for anything in return. The next morning, she showed up to Night Corp without makeup, no press-ready outfit, no polished speech. Declan stood waiting. "Well?" he asked. Ilara took a breath. "Your offer means more than you know. But there's someone out there who gave me everything when I had nothing. No contract, no conditions, just belief. And I can't build something new by erasing where I started." Declan didn't move. His jaw clenched slightly, but his eyes held a strange softness. "So you're saying no?" "I'm saying I already found my partner. He just doesn't know it yet." Then she turned and walked out. And for the first time in a long time, the girl who had nothing felt full. Ilara didn't have a plan. No speech prepared. No dramatic scene in mind. She just knew one thing. She had to find Jace. The bus ride across town was long and quiet. Rain tapped gently against the windows, the city blurring into soft streaks of gray. Her fingers gripped the folded note he had left behind like it was the last piece of a puzzle she hadn't realized was missing. She checked the old garage first, but it was locked, empty. A for lease sign now hung crooked above the entrance. The world had already moved on. Her heart thudded. She tried calling, no answer. Then she remembered the small diner 3 blocks away, the one where they used to grab $2 sandwiches when neither of them had much. She pushed open the door. And there he was. Jay sat alone at a corner table, still wearing that old jacket with a grease stain on the sleeve. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then he blinked. "Did something happen?" he asked, standing halfway. She walked toward him, slow but certain, then sat down across the table. "Yeah, something did." "You get the job?" "I turned it down." He stared at her, confused, like maybe he hadn't heard right. "You what?" She smiled, just a little. "I turned it down because it came with strings, because it meant walking away from the one person who believed in me before anyone else did." Jay sat back. His eyes dropped for a second. Then he looked up. "I didn't think I mattered that much." "You didn't have to. I did." They sat there in silence for a while, the hum of the diner filling the space between words. Then Ilara reached into her bag and pulled out a sketchbook. It was worn, edges bent, pages half torn, but it was full. "I want to build something," she said. "Not just for me. For us. I've got the designs, you've got the hands. What if we did it our way?" He didn't answer right away,
just stared at the book like it held the weight of a new beginning. Then he nodded. Okay. Not the loudest yes, but it was the one that mattered. And somewhere, deep down, they both knew this wasn't just a second chance at success. It was a second chance at choosing each other.
The next 2 weeks moved faster than anything Alara had ever known. Every morning, a black SUV picked her up and drove her to the Knight Corp design studio. She'd walk past marble pillars and glass elevators, through doors that whispered open like magic. Inside, everything smelled like money and possibility. Declan was always there, calm, observant, hands in his pockets, watching her the way people watch storms roll in, expecting something powerful. He never hovered, never pressured, just let her work. And she worked harder than she ever had. Every sketch she handed in led to another. Every idea built on the one before it. For the first time, her talent wasn't a secret she had to hide in a notebook. It was out in the open, respected, even admired. But late at night, back in the quiet of the garage office, something gnawed at her. Jace hadn't spoken much lately. She still slept above the shop, though she spent less time there. More nights ended with her too tired to talk, too full of noise from her new world. One evening, she found a note on the desk where she used to sketch. Ilara, I got another warning today. Rent's past due. They're shutting off the lights next week. Don't worry, I'll figure it out. Jay. She stared at the handwriting, her chest tightening. She hadn't even noticed the electricity had flickered the night before, or that the fridge was empty. She had been too busy designing coats for rich investors. The guilt hit her hard. She thought about calling him, offering help, but something stopped her. Maybe pride. Maybe fear that he'd say no. Or worse, yes. Meanwhile, Declan kept drawing her in. He started asking her questions that had nothing to do with fashion. What kind of music do you like? Favorite place as a kid? Ever wanted to travel? He remembered details, brought her coffee without asking, sent her articles about artists he thought she'd admire. One afternoon, he showed up with a single sketch in hand, a design she had done in week 1. This piece, it feels like you, he said. She smiled, a little surprised. No one had ever tried to understand her like that. He leaned against the table. I know what it's like to feel invisible, Ilara. I was the poor kid too, the one who wasn't supposed to make it. You don't owe anyone your loyalty, not when they've already written you off. The words lingered in the air like smoke. And somewhere across town, Jace stood alone in the dark, counting every coin he had left, wondering if he'd already lost her for good.
It didn't take long for the world to notice. 3 weeks after opening, a video went viral. A customer had filmed her reaction while trying on one of Alara's jackets, a custom piece made from thrifted fabric and stitched with a hidden quote on the inside lining, "You are allowed to begin again." The video hit 2 million views in 4 days. Suddenly their inbox was full. Fashion bloggers, local news, even a morning show producer asking if Alara would come on air. She hesitated. Cameras still made her nervous. But Jace nudged her gently. "Your story might be someone else's oxygen," he said. So she went. She sat on a red couch under bright lights with microphones clipped to her shirt. She spoke slowly, honestly, about being kicked out, about sleeping in a car, about being given a chance, not from a billionaire, but from a mechanic who saw her before the world ever did. The host smiled. "So you turned down a billionaire to start a business with a broke mechanic?" Alara didn't blink. "I didn't turn down a billionaire. I chose someone who never asked me to change." The audience clapped. By the time she got back to the shop, their online orders had doubled. And with it came the attention. One afternoon, as Alara stood behind the front counter folding thank you cards into each package, the door chimed. She looked up. Declan Knight, Same perfect suit, same steady gaze, but something softer in his posture now. No driver, no entourage, just him. "Hey," he said quietly. She nodded. "Hey." He glanced around the shop. The shelves lined with handmade tags, the small chalkboard wall filled with customer notes, the sewing machine humming in the back. "This is real," he said. She smiled. "It is." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I didn't come to change your mind. I just wanted to say, I get it now. You weren't saying no to me. You were saying yes to yourself." She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I think I needed someone like you to remind me I had a choice." Declan nodded, then reached into his coat and handed her a small envelope. No contracts, just a gift. Inside's a check. Do whatever you want with it. No strings. Then he turned to leave. As the door closed behind him, Ilara opened the envelope. A blank check. Signed. No limit. Jace stepped out from the back, wiping his hands on a rag. "Who was that?" She smiled. A reminder. That choosing the right path doesn't mean closing every door, just the wrong ones.
The check sat on the counter for 3 days. Ilara didn't cash it, didn't even touch it after that first moment. She left it tucked beneath a paperweight shaped like a thimble, as if trying to forget it was even there. But Jace noticed. He didn't say anything at first, just kept working, sewing. "Who's it?" he asked one night as they both sat on the floor of the shop, sharing a late dinner of cold pizza and ginger ale. She looked over at the counter. "I don't know. Could change everything." "Yeah, that's what scares me." He took a sip of his drink and leaned back against the wall. "You trust him now?" "I trust myself," she said, "and right now, myself isn't sure what to do." Jace nodded slowly, the kind of nod that carries more weight than it shows. The next day, Ilara was at the register when a woman walked in holding a small cardboard box. She looked nervous, early 40s, plain sweater, eyes tired. "I saw you on TV," the woman said. "I don't have much, but I used to love sewing. Thought maybe you could do something with this." Inside the box were old fabric scraps, faded silk, vintage lace, a handful of buttons shaped like stars. Ilara was speechless. "Thank you," she whispered. "It's good what you're doing here," the woman said. "You're not just selling clothes, you're giving people hope." After she left, Ilara stood in the middle of the studio, staring at the box like it was more valuable than any blank check. She called Jace from the back room. "We're not using the money," she said. "You sure?" "Yeah, we're building this with what we've got, one stitch at a time." And they did. They launched a new line, made entirely from donated materials. Every tag read, "Worn, loved, reborn." And each package included a handwritten note from Ilara herself. Orders didn't just grow, they exploded. And something even better happened. They started getting letters from shelters, from single parents, from people starting over, asking not just for clothes, but for purpose. Ilara and Jace decided right then, for every item sold, they'd give one away, no questions asked. Not because they had to, but because someone once gave them a second chance when they had nothing, and now it was their turn to do the same.
It started with a single post. A teenage girl in foster care had received one of Ilara's jackets through a donation drop-off. She posted a photo wearing it in her bathroom mirror, the tag visible on her sleeve. "Worn, loved, reborn. That's how I feel for the first time in years." The post went viral. Within 24 hours, their website crashed from traffic. Hundreds of messages flooded in, not from fashionistas or influencers, but from real people. People who had lost homes, lost jobs, lost themselves. And somehow, a small studio on a forgotten street was helping them feel seen again. Ilara and Jace didn't sleep that week.
They worked late into the nights, cutting fabric by hand, writing notes for every package, answering messages one by one. Not because they were required to, because they remembered what it felt like to be on the other side of silence. One evening, as they locked up, Ilara paused at the door and looked back at the studio. The soft glow from the sewing machine still lit the back wall. The chalkboard was full of new thank you notes, and the window display now held pieces from people across the country, each one crafted from fabric with a story. "This is bigger than us now," she said quietly. Jace nodded. His hands were calloused, his shirt stained, but his eyes held something steady. It always was. We just didn't see it yet. A week later, they were invited to speak at a national summit on social impact businesses. Ilara almost said no. She didn't like microphones, big stages, or suits with ties. But Jace looked at her and said, "Maybe it's not about being comfortable anymore. Maybe it's about being heard." So she went. She stood on a stage in front of 3,000 people, told her story. Not the polished version, the real one. The part about being thrown out, about sleeping in a car, about building something from scraps and faith. She ended with this: "I was given a second chance, not by someone who had everything, but by someone who gave me everything he had. Now we give that chance to others, one thread at a time." The crowd stood. Not because of fame, not because of fashion, but because someone had reminded them what it means to begin again. And backstage, Jace stood just out of the spotlight, hands in his pockets, watching the girl he once found curled up behind a gas station now shine brighter than the lights above her. And for once, he didn't feel behind. He felt home.
The morning after the summit, Ilara woke up to sunlight pouring through the windows of their tiny apartment above the studio. The world outside hadn't changed, but something inside her had. She stood barefoot in the kitchen, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, wearing one of Jace's old sweatshirts that hung off her shoulder like a memory. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She ignored it for a second. Let the silence breathe. Then curiosity got the best of her. The messages were piling in. A producer from New York, a retail chain offering shelf space, a famous designer wanting to collaborate, a publisher asking for book rights, all in one night. She stared at the screen. This was the kind of success people dreamed about, but somehow it didn't feel like a finish line. It felt like a choice. Jace walked in, half awake, hair a mess. "Big day ahead," he mumbled, reaching for a cup. Ilara turned, still holding her phone. "They want us everywhere," she said. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, that doesn't surprise me." She smiled at that, then frowned. "But if we grow too fast, we lose what made us different." Jace leaned on the counter. "Then we grow slow. We grow right, not loud." She nodded. That day, instead of jumping on flights or signing papers, they went downstairs and opened the shop, like they always did. The bell chimed, the lights flicked on, the sewing machine hummed to life. And then something unexpected happened. A girl about 19 walked in holding a notebook. "Are you Ilara?" she asked, voice trembling. Ilara stepped forward. "I am." The girl held up the notebook. "I drew some things. I know I'm not, official or trained, but I saw your story and I thought, maybe, could I learn from you?" Ilara looked at her, really looked at her. She saw herself, the same hunger, the same fear of being too late or too small. She smiled. "You just did. Come on, let's find you some fabric." They made space for her at the back table. pulled out old materials, gave her a pencil, and in that moment, something shifted again. Second Thread wasn't just a studio anymore. It was becoming a movement, not built on luxury, but on legacy, not focused on profit, but on people. Alara didn't need to be the biggest name in fashion. She just wanted to be the door someone else could walk through, because someone once did that for her. And now, it was her turn to leave it open.
The day wasn't perfect. There were no rainbows, no golden sunlight pouring through the windows. But to Alara, it was still the brightest day of her life. She and Jace had just finished their first free workshop, teaching a group of teens from a local shelter how to stitch, cut, and create. None of them had ever touched a sewing machine before. Some barely spoke, but their eyes sparkled with the kind of hope Alara remembered having before the world tried to take it away. Jace walked out from the back, carrying a tray of mismatched cookies, flour on his sleeves, and thread stuck to his apron. "Think they'll come back?" he asked, half smiling. Alara nodded, watching the scraps of fabric scattered across the work table. "They won't just come back," she said. "They'll build something, and then more will come. Just like we did." The bell above the door jingled gently. An elderly woman stepped in, carrying a soft fabric bundle. She wasn't there to buy anything. She came to donate her wedding dress fabric, neatly folded, yellowed by time. "I lost him last year, but I thought maybe this could become part of someone else's beginning." Alara hugged her, not because it was polite, but because it was right. That was what Second Thread had become. Not a business, not even just a movement. A space where people brought stories, not just clothes. A place where broken things weren't hidden. They were transformed. That night, Alara stood by the window as the city light shimmered faintly through the fog. Jace joined her, tossing a soft coat over her shoulders, the very first one they made together. "Ever wonder," he said, "what life would have been like if you'd said yes to Declan?" Alara turned to him, smiling gently. "Maybe I would have been shining, but I would have been alone. I didn't choose the spotlight, Jace. I chose your eyes, and in them, I found my light."
Happiness isn't about having more than others. It's about choosing the right person to build with, even when you have nothing. Sometimes the doors that close aren't the end of the story. They're just pointing you toward the door you were meant to walk through. Thank you for walking beside Alara and Jace through every chapter of their journey. Maybe their story reminded you of your own moments of doubt, your own second chances, your own quiet strength. Now, let me ask you this. If life gave you one more shot, would you choose the safe road or the one that leads to someone who sees your soul? Leave a comment below. And if you've ever started over from zero, maybe your story is next.